Every entrepreneur has a story. Welcome to Happy Half Hour with an Entrepreneur, where each episode your host, Brian Carney, will share a drink with a successful business owner and have them discuss their unique journey, gaining insight on what it takes to be an entrepreneur and the different ways to get there. Brian isn't just a beer nerd, he's also the co-founder of River's Edge Advisors, a financial planning firm headquartered in Delaware, specializing in working with business owners. It's time to pour yourself a drink and enjoy a happy half hour with an entrepreneur.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Happy Half Hour with an Entrepreneur. I'm your host, Brian Carney. My guest today is Henna Pryor from the Pryority Group. Henna started her career in the wild world of accounting in a Big Four firm at Ernst & Young, and she had an extremely successful 14-year career as a professional recruiter before leaving to start an executive coaching and leadership training business. To date, she has served 126 companies and coached over 1,052 clients during her career. Henna, welcome to the show.
Thank you. And can you introduce me like that every time we hang out?
Because absolutely, yeah. Anytime moving forward. So perfect. As you know, I'm going to try a beer that I've never had. So I'm going to try one of my favorite breweries. Oskar Blues has a Haze, a New England style IPA called Thick Haze. We're going to give this a shot, and you're going to be trying what? What are you going to be sampling?
I'm going to be drinking a not at all brand new to me mango White Claw, which was basically the drink of all of last summer, which I'm continuing.
There we go. So now I do have to, we'll talk about that real quick. Everyone has a flavor that they can't stand of White Claw. What's yours?
Watermelon.
Watermelon? Okay.
I love to eat watermelons. Whatever watermelon White Claw is not watermelon. Some weird essence of that I am not a fan of. Yeah.
Okay. I get it. Everybody has one. So
yeah.
Well, let's talk a little bit about your business. So tell us a little bit about your business and what you do.
Yeah. So about a year and a half, almost 2 years ago, I decided after 16, 17 years in corporate to branch out on my own. So I started a firm called Pryority Group. And I would say the simplest distillation of the business is executive coaching, leadership training, and sales and performance development and coaching. So all of those things, really everybody I work with, ranging from sales teams to leaders of Fortune 500s on anything that involves up-leveling and growth.
Right. Okay. So I have to ask the obvious question. You have an insanely successful career as a professional recruiter, finishing regularly every year in the top 10% of the company, which probably means you are doing extremely well financially. So some people would look at you and go, why would you leave that? That seems like a dream gig. So why did you end up leaving there to start your own gig?
Yeah. So before I answer that, I'll say some people don't look at me and say that. Everybody looks at me and says that. Everybody's like, what the hell, woman? Like, what's wrong with you?
Right.
Yeah. On paper, I had the greatest gig in the world. And I maintain that to this day. And it was a very hard decision for me to leave. After 14 years, I was working from home before the entire world was. You know, I'd done that for a decade. I quit my day by 3:30 to make sure that my kids got off the bus. I didn't really get back on for the rest of the day and had an income that, you know, knock on wood, I'm very grateful that most people would be envious of. But I hit a threshold where I realized for the better part of 5 years, everyone was looking at me as the person to learn from.
Yep.
And I had stopped learning.
Got it.
I hit a wall, and I'm a voracious learner. I like to be challenged. I like it when people can challenge me. And I knew for a while that had stopped happening, but golden handcuffs are tight. It was hard to make the decision to leave, but
very true.
I knew it was time.
How long, when did you have the first, like, you know what, maybe this isn't what I want to do for the rest of my life? And before you actually made the leap?
It was about 2 years that I thought about it before I actually did anything about it. Because again, I loved my job. I loved my clients. I think everyone waits for this big story of, you must have burnt out. Staffing is a burnout prone industry. Yeah. So it's always this expectation of, you must have just, gotten tired of it. And I apologize if you guys hear any lawnmower in the background, because
no, you're good.
The last week, just kidding. But yeah, it's a very burnout prone industry. Most people burn out from the industry and leave. And I maybe surprise folks when I say that wasn't it. It wasn't that. It was just a hunger to do more with my life and have a bigger role. The easiest way I can just explain it was actually explained to me really well. Somebody had said to me, you reach a point in your life where ROI, it used to mean return on investment.
Yeah.
And then it starts to mean to certain people, ripple of impact.
That's interesting.
And I decided it was time to do the other ROI.
Yeah. To have an actual impact on other people that you've come in contact with. That's pretty interesting.
Bigger impact.
Yeah. So you start out you graduate from college and you start out at Ernst & Young as a Big Four. How do you even make it to in the recruiting field?
So I was an accountant, an auditor at Ernst & Young. And after 2.5 years, I realized quickly, girl likes to talk too much to be an auditor.
Yeah. You don't have the auditor personality.
No, I'm good at math, but I say this with total love. My parents are hardworking immigrant parents who really wanted to steer me towards professions that were stable and safe. And so finance was a good choice because I didn't want to be a doctor. I don't like blood. There's certain other things that were less appealing. So the Big Four experience, some of my best friends came from there, but I was in accounting and I went and met with a recruiter at Kforce to get a new job, who then sat me down and said, why don't you do finance and accounting recruiting? You can use your entire skill set, but in a more, sales, commission, people-centric type of position. And I think I didn't even think about it for more than 5 minutes. I was kind of like, that's a thing?
Yeah,
I can do that?
I can make
money? Yeah. And at the time, the market was so good, not dissimilar to how it is now, where I said, if it doesn't work out, I go become an accountant again. No big deal.
That's great. So now you're doing your coaching thing. Right. Yes. And you're not really one to sugarcoat things. Even on your website, you have a quote that says, she does not accept excuses. So how often do you run into coaching clients that are actually ready for a little bit of tough love?
All of them. I think all of them are ready for tough love. Usually the exception is this: if someone comes to me because their boss says, I want you to work with an executive coach, then those people are not always ready or willing to do the work that requires them to change. But if somebody comes to me out of their own volition and says, I'm stuck, I think I can play bigger, I think I can play differently, then usually they're a bit prepared to receive that tough love and come to me because they know they'll get it.
That makes a lot of sense. So, I've talked to, especially on the podcast before, but I've talked to a lot of people personally where everyone comes up with, or many people come up with this arbitrary income number. Like once I make X amount of dollars, I'm going to be happy, right? Everything's going to fall into place. And then they get to that dollar figure and they go, I feel the same as I did last year. So how do you help people realize that money is not the ultimate? It's part of the puzzle, but not the ultimate.
Yeah. So you're spot on with that idea that it's not the end goal that ever makes anyone happy, right? I had a friend who, she said, I'm going to make this much in my business and I'm going to buy this David Yurman watch. Yeah. So she gets there, she bought it, she sold it like a year ago.
Right.
She didn't want it. She didn't want it anymore. So I'm like, well, what's the point of this? And so I have a mentor in coaching, one of the coaches I've done some work with, and he says this really well. He says, goals should be a place to come from, not a place to get to.
Yep. That's interesting.
When you think of a goal as a place to get to, let's look at a year. Let's say you're trying to get to this income number. You don't get there. And on day 364, you land a giant deal.
Yeah.
Right. The whole year you missed your goal. And then on day 364, you get it. And the whole year you beat yourself up and you talked about how crap it was. Goals being a place to come from means, how do you show up as a person who makes X every damn day of the week?
Yeah.
How do you walk through the world, do the activities, do the behaviors, have the mindset of a person who does that every single day of the week? It's a much better way to set a goal.
Yeah, that is very true. I mean, I feel like that's a good analogy where if you kind of skate through the whole year and then you land one big deal, you really didn't have that great of a year.
Right, exactly. You crapped on yourself the whole year because you didn't do anything, right?
You could have a much better year with that coming in. Yeah.
Right.
So one of the things that you talk a lot about is the way that people communicate by way of email. So I'd go as far to say that you're an email specialist. So
call me that.
Yeah. So how do you teach people to actually be better on email?
So the email thing, I'll back into that question. The email thing is sort of an accident. I didn't realize that was a strength I had back in my staffing days. I did it, but I didn't really think twice about it because I've always enjoyed writing. What has become increasingly obvious, especially now in the generation and the decade we're in, is digital networking and people's digital presence and digital communication. It used to be, I would argue, when we both started in the business,
Sure.
it was the nice to have. It was secondary. It was, meet people in person, get people on the phone. Email was a means to get people on the phone, get people to email.
Right.
50% of the labor market is now millennial Gen Z. These folks don't like to talk to you on the phone. They just don't. They're going to keep it as minimal as possible, right? And by 2025, the data says 64 to 74% are going to be millennial and Gen Z.
Mm-hmm.
So people who are digging in their heels on smiling and dialing and everything has to be done in person, they're struggling because they have not yet developed the skill that is sales writing or relationship building writing, which is an entirely different type of writing than, Doc Reddington's 12th grade English class.
Sure,
that was something else. That was essays. That was not sales writing. And
thesis.
What I found, most people don't know how to do it.
Right.
And so it became very eye-opening for me to realize who's teaching this stuff, who's how to create trust and influence and that, that know and like factor. How do we do that via email? And so it's become a real passion project for me to teach people how to do that.
That's awesome. It's funny you bring up, I never even thought about the 50% being, Gen Z and millennial.
Mm-hmm.
I've, as a Gen Xer, firm Gen Xer, very proud Gen Xer, I find myself sliding towards not wanting to talk to people on the phone. Like my family has chosen to order pizza from a place that we can order online instead of having to call in and talk to someone.
My husband does the same thing.
Yeah.
He does the same thing. It's like, I don't want to call.
So you really do have to be able to have your personality shine through in an email. I've noticed, I don't know if you've seen this LinkedIn thing that's going on, that someone connects with you and then as soon as you accept it, within 45 seconds, you get a long-winded direct message about how awesome they are and why you should buy stuff from them. So are you familiar with this? Is this how do you...
I get as many as you do. I'll say that.
All right, good.
Yes, I'm familiar with it. I can't stand it. I think it's making anyone who does their job in any integrity, get buried amidst all of this godforsaken noise. There's a couple things. I'll say that there's been an uptick in automation. A lot of, sales, revenue growth, entrepreneurs, business owners are using automation.
Yeah.
And I'm not against automation, but a lot of them are using it poorly.
Sure.
They haven't been taught how to write.
Yeah.
So what's going in is not great. As a former accountant, we used to call it garbage in, garbage out, right? Like the output is only as good as the input. And so they're using these softwares that are dripping out messages to their clients or prospective clients. And they're awful. I get constant, hi, Henna, I see that you're an executive coach in Philadelphia, PA. And I'm like, how long have you been working for Pryority Group? I'm like, It's my last name. Like, what do you mean working for? So no, it's awful. And I'll say the biggest mistake that people make, and I'm sure you see this all the time, the biggest mistake people make in sales writing, which sales writing is written psychology.
Yeah.
Like full stop. It's written psychology. The biggest mistake people make is this. They start an email to a potential prospect or potential vendor, potential client. And the first thing they write is, hi, first name, I'm Henna Pryor, and I've been with my company for this many years. We have expertise in this, like I, me, we. No one asked you yet.
Oh.
No one asked you yet.
I like that.
And what they should be doing is starting from the you perspective.
Yeah.
This is what I know about you. This is what I know about your industry. You can tell them about you later, but immediately it's disengagement, delete, because all we want to do is talk about ourselves to make ourselves sound credible and professional and knowledgeable and sophisticated. And it's a huge miss in sales messaging, huge miss.
That's a great call, because actually on the LinkedIn thing, the sort of the attack, I just had a guy, he LinkedIn with me. And then in 9 days, he sent me 4 of those exact messages. And I wrote back to him. I said, this ain't it, man. This ain't it. And I don't usually respond to them, but it was all I, we can do this. We can do this. And I'm like, you don't even know who I am or what I do.
Yeah.
You definitely need that personal connection for sure.
And I feel like most of us in sales have been trained out of that in our in-person and phone interactions.
Yeah.
Like we know better, yet somehow there's been this giant disconnect with how to apply what we've learned in our day-to-day too digital. For some reason, we turn into completely different people when we start writing emails.
Yeah.
And part of where I'm passionate is bridge the gap, man. Like bring these two together. You want to be authentically yourself here, the same way you are over here. Stop creating two personas, because this one, email guy over here, email professional guy over here is not serving you, because you sound like a self-centered idiot. It doesn't sound good.
Well, you always talk about how it's really important for your emails to come across like you're talking. So how can people do that?
Simplify the language, first of all. Again, there's this very misguided 10th grade English class student that comes up in all of us, where we think using big words or sophisticated phrasing or packed sentences makes us sound more knowledgeable or credible. When the research, written psychology and copywriting research, says very clearly that all that does is create more distance between you and the person reading the message. People are busy, they're overwhelmed, they're skimming your message, they're reading it fast. Use small sentences, use short words, make it simple, easy to digest. But somehow we don't do this. We put this like over, blocks of text, huge words, too much information that has nothing to do with them or their story.
Yep.
But there's a lot of tips I could give you, but I would say just starting from that you perspective and simplifying will immediately get people better results.
So now you're preaching to the choir here, because I have this theory that the art of simplicity is totally lost in the business world now. In our world, when you give someone a financial plan, it's 150 pages, and I don't think anyone cares. Right. So when you start talking about reading an email, a cold email or a cold message, if you don't have if I open an email and it's words, I go, I can't do this. Like my brain just can't compute. So being able to connect with someone by email is possible, but you have to do it the way you talked about.
Yeah. I mean, I teach it and people are seeing 2, 3, 4, 5x revenue improvement on email.
Yeah.
And there's this narrative that email is dead. I check my email all day. Do you check your email all day?
Yeah.
Email is dead for the people who write crap emails.
Right.
But I read plenty of well-written emails. So email is dead if you are writing crappy emails.
Yeah. Remember the days back when we were in college, when you'd take some time, you'd be like, I have to go check my email. You're always checking your email now. Like it's almost gotten as bad as an instant message, an AOL instant message for our generation.
Yeah. The people that claim it's dead are the people that are using the spray and pray, like volume is their game. That's it. It's just volume. They're like, I sent out 2,000 and I only got 200 responses. So really that's not a great percentage. Email is dead. And I'm like, I'm surprised you got that many if you sent it out to 2,000, because your approach is dead. It's not that email is dead. Your approach is dead.
Yeah. It's a great point. So
online support.
Yeah, right. You talk a lot about taking risks professionally. So what do you mean by that?
I pivoted my career twice, which people are always interested by or confused by. I was in the Big Four accounting role. I pivoted to recruitment, and then I pivoted to executive coaching and training. Everything I've built in my life and in my career was based on placing small bets.
Yeah, on yourself.
On myself and on things that I didn't know if they were going to work out or not.
Yeah.
There's one of the best lessons I've gotten early on, especially in the entrepreneurship journey, is human beings are naturally a little bit self-centered.
Yeah.
Right? We think everyone is looking at us. We think everyone is watching us fall, watching us soar. Nobody's really watching us. And so I've gotten a lot of success from just trying things. I have a bunch of programs that I spend a decent bit of time on that didn't really take off as much as I hoped they would. Maybe a few people were interested, a few people weren't. The only people that know that are the people that I talk to about it.
Wow.
That's it. Nobody else knows. But then the things that went well, if they, there was traction or it was starting to get some interest, I doubled down. And then I doubled down again.
Yeah.
And then I doubled down again. And all of a sudden it's a huge part of my business. But people are so terrified of the outcome that they won't even place the small bet. They won't even try the little experiment.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I tend to do my analogy for that with people thinking that, people are always watching you.
Yeah.
I have a real tough time going to a wedding and dancing because I feel like everyone's making fun of me.
Everyone's watching.
Yeah. No one's watching, just go for it. Yeah.
Right. No one, unless you're like in the middle of the big circle, right?
Yeah, doing the jump rope. Yeah.
Right. No one's really watching. If you're just off to the corner, shimmying your shoulders, no one's watching, but it's the truth. And it stops people from trying things that are innovative and interesting. And it breaks my heart because there's so much untapped potential because people just don't want to place the small bet.
How are you able to coach someone to say, hey, do this, kind of like push people off the ledge? Because I think sometimes people get to the ledge and are like, I'm a little afraid. Sometimes they just need someone to push them. How do you do that?
Can I do it with you right now? Can
Sure.
we just try it? Okay.
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. So let's say this is not happening, but let's say you're going to quit this job tomorrow. You're going to open a bar in the Caribbean.
Yeah.
Right? You and Kristen are gone. You're going to open a bar in the Caribbean.
Okay.
Let's say
Cocktails
you did
and
this
dreams.
you're freaking out about it. You put your entire savings, you sell your house, all your money goes into it and it sinks, right?
Yep.
Sinks. Okay. You and Kristen have to take the kids to the parents for a little bit. At one point, the parents are like, guys, it's time to get out of here. Like, we're moving, we're selling the house. You don't have this house to live in anymore.
Right.
So catastrophe keeps adding up, right? You guys all end up at a homeless shelter, all of you. Real talk, real question. How long until you, Brian Carney, are running that homeless shelter?
It's a good point. Quickly.
Right.
Yeah.
Because you're not wired to just roll over and take it.
Yeah, you're right.
If you saw that things were going downhill, you would adapt, you would pivot, you would change something. You wouldn't even let that outcome happen. But even if it did, you'd be running that joint in a week's time. And I know that. I know that about you.
Yeah, right.
So we as humans, we'd take longer and we'd go deeper. But as humans, we catastrophize. And sometimes the answer is just follow that catastrophe train all the way to the end. Let's do it. Let's go there.
Let's go literally with what is the worst possible scenario. Mm-hmm. And then when you, as you're saying this, I'm like, okay, well, that would never happen. You got like 2 steps in. I'm like, that's never going to happen. Because I have some ownership in that. Yeah.
Right. But we have to name the fear though. We have to there's this, Brene Brown calls it name it to tame it. Yeah. Right. When it's percolating back here, it feels like the most frightening thing in the world. And when you actually say out loud, if this, then that, okay, let's say that, then what would you do if that happened? Like, let's walk that scenario to the end of the road. Let's not just keep it at theory. Let's walk it through. And then they'd say, honestly, if it was that crappy, I'd probably shift gears a bit. And if I needed to go back and I'd get another corporate job, Yeah,
exactly. It's not all that bad. It's interesting that you do make a good point. That is, you kind of play out that worst case scenario. It's easy to not get that far down.
It seems simple, but it's worth saying that it's very hard work to do with yourself. It's very hard. I mean, I have my own coach. Coaches have their own coaches because it's very difficult to hold that mirror up for yourself and see it clearly and objectively without your own stuff getting in the way. Yeah. It's just hard to do.
Right. One of the things I wanted to ask you about is, obviously you said, we talked about a little bit in the beginning that you were, for every year you're at K-Force, you were in the top 10%. And that included having children along the way where you weren't necessarily able to pound the phones or, work 70, 80 hours a week, which in your industry is sort of, I don't want to say the norm, but the norm. So you had to pivot. How did you continue to do really well when you have a full-time working husband, you have two little kids at home, and you're still, responsible for trying to make those goals?
Yeah. I'm going to answer in a way that's probably a bit of a throwaway. I'm not entirely sure. Like, I think, because I want to be fair to anybody else who's in that position. I have ideas. I have some suspicions as to what made that easier, but it's hard for me to diagnose it for sure. I will say that the messaging helped. I was definitely quick to the fact that if you want your business to grow and scale and you don't want to do it live all the time, which takes time, right? It's a time-intensive process. Then becoming really effective at your messaging is a way that you can get more done in less time. So that absolutely played a huge part. I would attribute a lot of the success to that, the fact that I was agile to that early on. Right. But the other thing, and I think any mother, especially any working mother, would attest to this, is you become very boundaried with your time. I don't have time. I think in the office, the days I went into the office, people knew I was friendly. They knew I was warm, but they kind of came up to me with this, I know you're busy. I know you only have 2 minutes.
You're right.
Because I wasn't there to play. If I was going to work less and get home to my kids, I was going to kick ass in the hours I was working. I was going to dial in and focus. And that's harder and harder for some of the new generation to do because of the amount of distraction that's in the world now. But if people want to get serious about income and not double their hours, got to dial in your activities and the time that you're doing it.
Yep. Great point. That really is a good point. And let's talk a little bit about boundaries, because, I've struggled with this, especially during the pandemic, and having a phone or an iPad or a laptop or whatever, the boundaries between when you're at home and when you're at work are super blurred right now. How do you help people really maintain that, that ability to be present when they're at work and home?
Yeah, everybody has their own Achilles heel around boundaries. So some people, it's checking their email. Some people, it's the hours that they work, right? So first step is just get really clear on where do you tend to break your boundary first. Everyone's got, for some, it's a combination of all those things. I'm a huge fan of, I don't know if you've ever read James Clear, Atomic Habits. Yeah. He talks, he's a favorite of mine, but I love, I have it next to my office too. But I'm a big fan of the way he describes anything that you want to do that's an identity shift. So if you're someone who says, I don't want to be the person who's checking my email well into the evening when my kids are home. Okay, so that's the identity. You want to be a present parent, right? Sure. That's what you've chosen. You're not going to be able to talk your way into that identity. You're not even going to be able to put a goal out there and get yourself to that identity. You're skipping steps. So what you need to do is look at your systems. What are your systems that are around you? My systems were pretty much non-existent for a while. And so for some time, I had to literally shut my computer down and put a pile of books on top of it so that if I wanted to get back on it, that it was a physical, visual reminder of you are choosing to lift up this heavy stack of books to do your email instead of spending time with your family.
That's great.
Right. But you have to hack the systems a little bit, look at your environment. Maybe it's for some, my husband installed some Google internet thing where you can shut off internet access to certain devices after a certain time. So he does it for the kids. And, I'm thinking about doing it for myself, to be honest, because the temptation is too strong. Your willpower is only as good as your environment. So first thing we tend to look at together is just talk to me about your environment before we start talking about your goals.
That's great, because I noticed, having that ability to stay present with my kids, especially during the pandemic, was really difficult, where, all hell was breaking loose and I'm trying to respond to emails well into the night. And you first of all, it gives you a ton of anxiety, even if you're just sitting when things are normal in times of peace, as I say, where you're just scrolling randomly through Instagram, you feel like you don't actually relax because you're just scrolling and scrolling and scrolling.
Yeah. What I also noticed about myself, I don't know if you were like this too, is that even when I was scrolling Instagram to relax, I wasn't actually relaxed.
Right.
Like
exactly.
It didn't actually relax me. And so I had to do a lot of sort of self-reflection and self-work on, if I am bringing this level of anxiety or sort of leftover stress into my home, then what's more important? It's a work in progress. I don't want to be on some, high and mighty. Sure. I'm great about staying off of social media. I am sure not. Right. But it is helpful for me when I need to really get better with my boundaries. If I feel like they've slipped completely away, then I almost again, put some systems in place. So if I'm on Instagram for a while, then I literally make myself, a post-it the next morning that said, you were on Instagram for an hour and ignored your kids yesterday. Right. And I make it's staring me in the face. It's staring me in the face, and I'm less likely to do it that evening.
That's great. If it works, that's perfect.
Sure. Yeah. I can't fix the past, but I can try to do something about it in the future.
Yeah. Well, speaking of the pandemic, you leave, like we talked about, a high-paying job at the end of 2019 to start your own business. You get midway through March, or let's just say you get into April of 2020. How are you feeling about starting your own business?
I was panicked, and it was unwarranted.
Yeah. Interesting.
I had a great year. And so I say that with no ego, but rather to be potentially a tale of someone who really focused on action instead of worrying about the big goal or the big plan. And let me back into this by saying, I am in a place of privilege in that my previous job allowed me to put money aside to relax that concern. And my husband has a well-paying job. So let me just own that privilege right out of the bat. Not everyone can do that.
Sure.
But despite those circumstances, I just, and I teach and train and coach on this too. You can think about the end goal, or you can kind of one of the partnerships I do a little bit of work with Russell Wilson's firm. And one of the things we talk about is neutral thinking.
Mm-hmm.
So neutral thinking means not getting super hung up in what's going to be at the end, and rather, in his world, it's what's the next right pass? What's the next right, play we're going to run?
Yeah.
What's the next thing I need to be thinking about to make sure my head's in the game? I would say I applied the same strategy, which is, okay, things are changing. What can I control this minute, this hour, this day? And I just focused on that and figured the rest would sort itself out.
That's a great way to attack it.
I guess
there's no other way.
I think all of us were in survival mode. So if I started to think too far out, then I went into, I can't breathe. So we had to slow myself down, which is not something I do naturally.
Yeah.
It took a lot of effort, but it was very helpful. It paid off.
That's great. So one of the questions I want to ask you is, I'm sure you probably have a favorite success story from one of your clients.
I have a lot. It's like asking for favorite children.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know if I call it. Yeah. I was going to say, did you have a different?
I was going to say, or maybe a recent one, not necessarily your favorite one where you're.
I mean, my favorite, so I have two kinds. I'll give it two categories. Okay. So on the leadership coaching side, honestly, my favorite success stories are always some version of a woman in, a higher level, usually it's manager, director, VP, C-suite. Those are sort of the ranges I work with. A woman who historically has had a hard time speaking up in meetings or finding her confidence, who, we spent some time working together, and she goes into a meeting and shares some really big idea with her male dominated team, and they love it and they crush it.
She crushes it. Yeah.
That woman comes back to me going, I am on fire right now. Like my body is tingling. I feel like I don't know what just happened, but it felt so good, right? Yeah. Those moments are hugely satisfying for me professionally every time I get one of those. On the sales side, kind of both sides of it. On the sales side, honestly, it's been a little bit more on this writing side. It feels so good to see people having fun with their writing again. But more importantly, seeing the result. I think what they don't realize when they start learning about sales writing and copywriting and start getting trained in it is not only do they have more fun because they're more authentically themselves and they're writing more like they talk.
Sure.
The results are way better. So they're pumped. They're seeing so much more output. And the clients are loving it because they're like, yes, this person gets me. I want to work with this person. All of a sudden they're making friends with their clients. Yeah. And so all around, it's just like it's a warm and fuzzy feel good. That's just great. To bring that kind of impact to that industry.
Yeah, to be able to have a pure human connection through email is pretty amazing. To be able to teach someone how to do that.
It's not that hard too. Yeah. I'll say it's not that hard. People think it is, but it's not. You just need to learn how. Yeah.
One of the things that you say that I absolutely love, because I've experienced this in personally, and I've seen other people go through it, is asking someone, are you busy or are you productive? So what do you mean by that?
So I adopt, there's a gentleman named Cal Newport. He wrote a book called Deep Work. As you can tell, I'm a reader. Yeah. Name dropping books. Cal Newport makes a distinction between busy versus productive. So I'll just make it real. So for financial advisors or for any sort of sales professional, busy is, I did all these dials today. I sent all these emails today. I got back to all these people today. I scheduled all these meetings. And it's one of those days where at the end of the day, you're like, what'd I do?
Right.
Like, what did I do? Like, I was busy all day, but it's doing activities to give this false feeling of I'm doing things. I'm creating output. I have activities that are under my belt. Productive is when you actually have conversations that are impactful and move the needle, right? Mm-hmm. You write a really high performing email. You take the time to write a high performing email that gets a ton of responses and a ton of traction. Yeah. Or you have a 2-minute longer conversation, but that person takes, a little more time with you. They go a little bit deeper. That's a productive day. It might have not been a busy day, but it was a productive day, and productive outperforms busy hand over fist.
I love that. We talk all the time about, sometimes I come home and I'm like, I lost that day. I lost today. Today was a loss because I answered emails all day. Yeah, that makes that's perfect. If you were to give a piece of advice to someone that's, I don't want to say stuck in corporate America, but someone that's in corporate America who's contemplating jumping out and doing their own thing and starting their own business. What piece of advice would you give them based off of the success that you've had?
I hate to be repetitive, but make small bets. Make small bets. That I think people tend to see things as very binary. You know, I stay in corporate, I go do my own thing.
Yeah.
Why don't you think about, you know, if there is something you have your eye on, let's say, you know, in my world, it was coaching.
Yeah.
Even though I had the opportunity to make a clean break, I started to get certified while I was still at K-Force. I mean, I left K-Force in August. I started my certification in May.
Right.
Like
taking the steps.
Tinkering. Yeah. And I the metaphor I give a lot of my coaching clients is we tend to look at these next steps and we feel very idealistic about them. This is what I want to do. This is what it's going to look like.
Yep.
But it terrifies us because we don't really know what it looks like. And I say it's like opening a walk-in closet and the lights are out and you're like, what's in here? Like, I know there's clothes in here, but what's in here, right? Like, turn some lights on. And the way you do that is while you're at your corporate job, find some people on LinkedIn, find some people through your network, friends of friends that are doing things similar to what you'd like to do, and ask them for a 5-minute conversation.
Yeah.
I had 5-minute conversations with no less than 50 coaches before I decided to become a coach.
Right.
Because I wanted to understand what's in this here closet. Like, it's a thing that I don't understand yet.
Yep.
Turn on the lights, see what's there before you start doing anything drastic. Yep.
Love it. So I'm going to kind of put you on the spot now. You said something earlier.
Okay.
And you said that you talk to people about like, what's the point of this? So what's your point of this company? Like, what's your point of, I'm going to ask you as a coach, what's your point of this?
So it's like my Simon Sinek big why, but I like the Brian Carney, what's your point?
Right. Yeah.
Right. Okay. My point is that I think there's a lot of people who are very high potential who don't have the right roadmap.
Mm-hmm.
I think people make a lot of guesses about how to walk through this world, and they don't have the support to make the decisions that will enable them to grow and leap a lot faster, whether that's in personal and professional development, whether that's in sales and revenue growth. People are operating off of, old things or what their manager that that first hired them told them. And they don't take the time to do that deep exploration to figure out, these are my strengths, these are my superpowers, these are my blind spots. And if I address all these things, I freaking fly. Right. So my why is the thing I needed most, which is to get out of my own way. So my why is to get people out of their own way.
Yep. This sort of like you mean like a self-limiting belief? Is that what you mean by getting out of their way?
Belief, sometimes it's actions, right? I would say I want certain things, but then my behavior would point me in another direction. I would say I want to spend more time with my kids at night, and then I work till 7:00 on K-Force days,
Right. Yeah.
So it can be mental, it can be physical, it can be spiritual, but a lot of times we're our own worst critics and our own worst obstacles.
Yeah, definitely. All right. So last question. I always like to ask this question.
Yeah.
You can visit yourself. You can go back in time and visit Henna when she's 23, 25, 26, in your mid 20s.
Okay.
Now, as not a 23-year-old, what piece of advice would you have given to yourself back then?
I always don't like these questions because I made a lot of missteps. I did a lot of things that I maybe would have done differently.
Yeah.
But I'm one of those annoying people who truly believes that all of the stumbles and all of the falls led me to here. I mean, I probably would have drank less soda. I didn't drink coffee then. I only started drinking coffee a few years ago. So I rotted all my teeth with Coca-Cola at 8:15 in the morning.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't have done that. But no, truly, like, failure is awesome. Just fail. Here's a good one. I would have learned more from my failures. I think I liked to scoot past them anytime I did anything where I stumbled and fell. I don't like to linger in hard stuff. I pride myself on just moving on.
Sure.
But if I could tell 20-something Henna what to do differently, it's take just a minute and have a retrospective on what could you learn from that.
Love it. That's such a great, every failure is an opportunity to learn. I think that's a great piece of advice.
One that most of us don't do as adults either, but we're trying.
Very true. Yeah, exactly. We're trying. Well, thank you so much for your time. This was awesome. I really appreciate it. So if you'd like to learn a little bit more about Henna, check out her website at prioritygroup.com. I'm going to have to rate this beer now. So I'm going to go thick haze from Oskar Blues. I'm going to give this on a scale of 5. I'm going to give it 3.75. Really enjoyed it.
Oh, where's it from?
Colorado. Longmont, Colorado. It is one of my, they have a bunch of great beers. One called Dale's Pale Ale. If you want to get Ian a little something.
Will check it out.
And you give your mango 4 out of 5, no doubt, right?
I mean, I've drank it so much that it's basically water, but yes,
exactly.
We'll give it 4 out of 5. So
awesome. If you want to connect with me on the Untapped app, my username is brcarney7. To learn more about how my firm helps business owners with their financial planning, visit riversedgeadvisors.com. And to hear past episodes of the podcast, go to happy-half-hour.com. Henna Pryor, thank you so much, and cheers to you.
Thanks for having me. Cheers.
Thank you for listening to Happy Half Hour with an Entrepreneur, sponsored by Rivers Edge Advisors. For more information on how Rivers Edge Advisors can help you, visit their website at riversedgeadvisors.com. If you'd like to connect with Brian Carney for business advice or just to share a beer, follow him on Instagram at riversedgeadvisors_LLC.